Good morning, everyone. My name is Marnie Beaudoin. I am a curriculum consultant with Edmonton Public Schools in the Institute for Innovation in Second Language Education, which is a recently formed body within our school district. And some of you may have heard of some of the work we've done at Edmonton Public Schools in the terms of languages. And I guess I'm here to share with you today a little bit of our processes that we've gone through in beginning to implement the European language portfolio and some of the work that we've done in that area and using that as a launching point for you. The examples that you're going to see and the information that you will receive about Edmonton Public Schools is intended as illustrative to help you begin or continue whatever journey you are on in terms of European language portfolio and give you some things to think about. Some key points to also remember from day one: successful implementation of Common European Framework of Reference and European language portfolio can be achieved, not necessarily will absolutely be achieved, but could be achieved when learners are autonomous and self-reflective, right? We need autonomous learners to be able to pull this off. I think that was pretty clear from your presentation, David, that the European language portfolio is integrated into instruction, and I hear this time and again from the participants as well, that it can't be an add-on. It can't be something presented to teachers as, well, here's something else for you to do. And that the European language portfolio is explicitly linked to curriculum. So whatever it is that are the legal requirements of your teachers, or if you are a teacher, for you to be doing in the classroom already, that this links with those requirements. So we're looking at deepening our understanding of the Common European Framework of Reference, and this is how we're going to try and go about it. You have two columns on your chart. In one column, you're going to articulate some qualities or characteristics of the Common European Framework of Reference and the can-do statements that are within the CEFR. So the can-do statements refer to all those sentences that start with je peux, I can, right? That's what those are. And then in the other column, you're going to reflect how do these qualities or these characteristics, this particular quality or characteristic, correlate with my teaching, learning, and assessment goals. Now, these could be, depending on your context and who you are. If you're representing an organization, maybe these will be the learning, teaching, and assessment goals of your organization. Maybe they will be of your classroom. Example, okay, because I know this is a little muddy. In Edmonton Public Schools, which is my context, my organization, the quality would be that the can-do statements focus on real-life language functions. When I look through those can-do statements, I don't see I can conjugate 10 verbs. I see real-life applications. How does this reflect our teaching, learning, and assessment goals? Well, we have an applications-based curricula in Alberta, which are the real-life context kind of language functions. We also emphasize language functions and teacher in-services. So for where I'm coming from, this reflects quite nicely what we're doing with teachers already. So another quality of the can-do statements could be that the can-do statements encourage self-reflection based on an established criteria. That seems fairly obvious. Reflection, how does it reflect what we do? Well, assessment for learning is an instructional focus in our district, and many of our teachers are working with an assessment for learning. So they will be learning about how self-reflection will function in instruction in their classroom. These are just to illustrate the point. But for you, what you want to do is, if you can work with somebody in your organization, great, and if you can't, you don't have to. Look at the Common European Framework of Reference, and we need to hand out copies of that. Take a look at the Common European Framework of Reference and the can-do statements within the Common European Framework of Reference, and through talk with others, articulate some qualities or characteristics of what you're seeing there in the Common European Framework of Reference. And then think about, how does this reflect what you want to do anyways within your work, with your institution? Because you're getting deeper into this for you and what it means for you, and trying to find what the value is intrinsic for you and your work that you're doing with your organization. Because in the end, what you would like to be able to understand, and what you probably, everybody in this room, everybody at the 3 sites are language leaders in the country. So you will be in positions where you will need to be able to articulate what is valuable about the Common European Framework of Reference and what is valuable about the European language portfolio to others who are also within your own teaching and learning context. So perhaps this will give you some means to be able to do that even further than when you came in. And if you want to copy any of the others down that your colleagues have contributed, then that might be also a good idea. So the CEFR passport and Edmonton Public Schools. So just a very quick, please distribute away. For the Common European Framework of Reference, Nathalie is just distributing something now. In Edmonton Public Schools, I'll wait until you all have a copy before I speak to this first bullet, but I'll just speak to the second bullet. Edmonton Public Schools is not altering the existing can-do statements in the Common European Framework of Reference. And the reason we are not interested in altering them in any way is because we want the students in our district to have access to the same types of international currency and be able to articulate and discuss language proficiency with anybody else who might be using the Common European Framework of Reference. So our students should mean the same thing when they say A1, for example. I'm an A1 in oral interaction in French, as somebody who lives someplace else. That they will share this common understanding in language around language proficiency. The enhancement that you will notice on the bottom of the page is called expressive and receptive, and that is to accommodate signed languages. There's currently no accommodation for signed languages in the Common European Framework of Reference, and we teach signed languages in Edmonton Public Schools. So it's signed languages, not necessarily American Sign Language, it's any signed language, but we teach American Sign Language, both bilingual and language and culture classes in our schools. So we needed to have that represented on our Common European Framework of Reference that we would be using in schools. So that is why that enhancement is added. Our deaf language consultant worked with what was already there in the Common European Framework of Reference to construct those 2 strands. So that's what those are referring to. Other than that, that's just an enhancement, but we're not changing the rest of it. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we're doing in Edmonton Public Schools, and so I just wanted to give you a little bit of a context. Very, very briefly, I won't spend a lot of time on this. We have 197 schools, 80,000 plus students. Just over 38,000 students are currently enrolled in language programs in Edmonton Public, and the languages we offer are American Sign Language, Arabic, Mandarin, Cree, French, German, Hebrew, Japanese, Punjabi, Spanish, and Ukrainian. And we also have 7,900 identified ESL students, although the number of actual English language learner students is higher than that, but those are who have been identified. And Nathalie is just handing around some information about the Institute for Innovation in Second Language Education, which I will just leave with you to read at your leisure. And if you have any questions, you can ask me about that at some point. So this just gives you an idea of our context. Some of you are coming from school districts where you have more students and some probably less. What are we doing with the European language portfolio? We're currently piloting in between 15 to 20 schools, and schools can refer to anything from, the French teacher in the school, one teacher who is piloting ELP, to an entire department, language department in a high school. So there's a range there. And the reason that there's 15 to 20 is that number is always changing depending on how many information sessions have been offered and who has signed up most recently. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Our goal is to pilot in 50 schools next year. It's ambitious, but we're hoping to do it. And we're also looking at doing a whole school pilot. We have a high school with approximately 1,500 students who are interested. The principal is very keen to pilot the ELP with all the students in the school. Because there are a lot of students registered in language programs, but beyond that, the majority of students in the school are ELL students, or English Language Learner students, and he's very keen to be able to support them in their learning through the European language portfolio. So we have begun that process. It's not exactly clear how we will do that. Did you have a question?
Is the piloting done from K-12?
The current piloting, participating teachers, yeah, I've got everything from kindergarten, grade 12, French as a second language, immersion, language and culture, bilingual programs. I have an Arabic teacher in the pilot, French immersion, French as a second language. It's pretty much across the board representation. How are we going about doing this? Well, this is a little bit of the nuts and bolts of it. We have monthly information sessions for staff in EPS. We have something called a SUPS memo or superintendent's memo, and everybody in the district gets this email saying what the upcoming events are. And we're very careful, actually, in our advertisement of these monthly information sessions to advertise it for staff. It's not specifically for teachers, it's for all interested staff. So in casting this wide net, who are we getting coming to these information sessions? Well, mostly it's language teachers. That's the vast majority of people coming to them, but we're also getting administrators. We're getting people from our personnel department who are planning a pilot to have incoming teachers self-assess according to the Common European Framework of Reference and provide some information regarding their language proficiency. We also do language proficiency screening at Edmonton Public Schools, so we will be calibrating that as well, that existing measure, to the Common European Framework of Reference. We also have a student assessment branch, so people who work specifically in the area of student assessment, and they have been briefed on our work in the ELP and CEFR. Also, our career education staff have come to the information sessions and are learning about the Common European Framework of Reference and its implications for the world of work. They've also been given a one-pager. David, when you said people in the workplace want one page, I was gratified to hear that, because our career education consultants who will work with bodies such as Alberta Apprenticeship Board, for example, and go to these meetings, have copies of the Common European Framework of Reference, and then I just did a one-page of briefing so that they can talk about the Framework of Reference and begin to inform our business community regarding this. When you get the strategic plan this afternoon, you'll see that we have establishing a business advisory group as part of our first year in our strategic plan, an outside business advisory group, which is what I have to do when I go home to Edmonton. Apparently the letter's written, I just have to start sending it out. We also include, in our information sessions, we issue some special invitations to people outside the district. For example, Alberta Assessment Consortia is someone with whom we work quite closely, and we wanted to make sure that they were in the know about what we were doing, as well as some professors in the post-secondary education who will be sending a lot of student teachers in education our way. And we think it's important for them to know what we're doing in our classrooms, and also something that they can begin to pedagogically implement in their classrooms if they haven't already. So we're trying to, as I said, we're trying to cast a wide net with our implementation. We feel quite strongly that the best chances for success for the European language portfolio and the framework in terms of implementation in our district will lie in a lot of people sharing information about it and a lot of people having understanding about it. We want it to be something that extends beyond the language classroom as much as we can. And we include lots of people because we want accountability. We want to make sure we're doing a good job with this. We want many eyes on this. We want lots of people to feel that they are a stakeholder in this. We also have parent groups who are part of our plan to be working with and provide information to. Yes?
Just a question in terms of getting those, are you already doing those monthly sessions?
Yes, we've started the monthly sessions. I think to date, we have about over 100 teachers now who have been in service in the Common European Framework of Reference and the ELP. And I should mention that we have all of those sessions after school, and we feed them. Yes, this is important. You must put that you're feeding them, that you are providing refreshments and food, and then people will come.
At each of those sessions,
Mm-hmm.
do you get representation from all those groups you listed on that previous slide?
We have had. That's who we've had attend so far.
So those, like at those sessions, are they building sessions? Do you have to like go to each one, or are they separate modules? Or
It's one basic information about what is the Common European Framework of Reference and what is the ELP. It's about 1 hour, and it goes through each component, and it is come as you are. It is whoever wants to register. But what we do at these sessions is,
It's like a 4 to 5 o'clock thing? Or
yeah, it's a 4 to 5 o'clock thing. It's exactly what it is. It's a 4 to 5 o'clock thing. And they come, they register with someone so we know exactly who we're getting, and they sign an attendance form, because what we're thinking is that we need to track it really carefully from the beginning. So we track who's coming and who's actually attended. And then during those sessions, after kind of towards the end of the session, once they've had a chance to hear everything, we send around a little sheet that says, yes, I'm interested in piloting portfolio materials. And what we're quite clear in telling the teachers is this is going to be, and you'll see in the next slide, this is going to be at whatever level is comfortable for you, this implementation. So some of you might want to go and do the whole thing and implement the entire European language portfolio. And some of you might just want to get your feet wet and try out some of the biography pieces. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So then, from the group of people who are there, some sign up to pilot materials, and then I take that list and send an email to all the people who are on that list and say, thank you for attending, thank you for expressing an interest in piloting. Here are some options of how you could begin. Let me know what's going to work for you. And so then they email me back, and every time you might get a little bit of a smaller group, right? Every single time, right? Like you'll get so many people register for the session, and usually they all come, but maybe 1 or 2 don't. And then of all of those people, some sign up to pilot materials, and some say, I don't think I want to do it right now, and that's fine. And then out of those people you email, a portion of those email you back and say, this is where I want to begin, and then we create the next step. Some teachers have chosen to come in for a one-on-one coaching session, and we arrange a time, and they come in, and we talk about how would you like to implement this in your classroom, what are you thinking of doing. One teacher who came in teaches Spanish as a second language in elementary school. In the elementary school she teaches in, and she says, I have a tremendous number of English language learners in my class. Like, this was her home room, but I have a tremendous number of English language learners in my class as well. And so this is how I think that I want to go about this. Can you help me? And it was, okay, well, let's create these biography sheets, try this, and then get back to me. Whereas some just say, please just send me what you have for the biography, and I'd like to try it out at my own pace. So it's a mix. So then from those people who commit to trying something at whatever level, I track that and record who they are, what their school is, what the grade level is, what the language program is, and what they're trying out. And then before I came here, there was an email that went out to everybody who has signed up to do some piloting to say, how's it going? And those emails are coming in, and some people are saying, well, you know, I hit a roadblock because we had this and this and this happening in our school. And what's become clear to me is that these teachers need continued support in doing this implementation. And sometimes that support is as simple as saying, don't worry, you know, this is not high stakes. What else do you need? And sometimes they say, well, that's all I just needed, I guess, was just a little boost. I'll try it tomorrow. And some say, well, you know what, I think that I'm not sure what I need to do. Can I come in and meet with you? So it depends.
And are you able to provide any release time? Do you have that flexibility budget-wise?
I currently, it's not like we have a large budget for this. Currently, everything I do is on sometime after school or sometime in the teacher's schedule when they can meet, and I try and be the flexible one. When I get back from these workshops, sometime in June, I suspect, what I'll do is bring together all the teachers who have piloted. Some of the teachers might be self-conscious because they've only just tried a little bit. And what we're trying to be careful to communicate them is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you will benefit from getting together with your colleagues and listening to what they have been able to achieve in their classrooms and what they're doing, and maybe you'll get some ideas to go further. So what we're trying to do is build momentum, but it's slow. It takes time to do that. So that's where we currently stand. Just getting back to the specifics of implementation, our pilot is voluntary pilot. Now, just to get to your question about what is the best way? Is this the best way to do it? We don't know if this is exactly the best way to do it, but with the resources we have currently, this is the best way it seems like for us to do it at this time. We wanted to give an opportunity for any teacher who was interested to be able to pilot the ELP. So everybody has the opportunity. Everybody has the opportunity to get the information about the ELP, and everybody has the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to implement portfolio materials. Now, the con of that, or the downside of that, is that it's kind of more difficult to manage. The margins of it are fuzzier, they're always changing, and the sand sort of shifts beneath your feet. The upside is that everybody who's involved really wants to be there and is really quite passionate about it. So it's a voluntary pilot. Teachers choose their starting point. So teachers do choose, after they listen to the information session, they do choose where they want to begin. When in fact, if they want to pilot, and lots of teachers have said, I really want to do this, but because of a whole bunch of reasons, I just can't do it this year. We say, fine, come back next year and contact me in September and we'll pilot then. So it's pretty low pressure. And in keeping with that kind of attitude of low pressure, they choose the starting point. The vast majority of teachers are choosing biography to start with. And I think the reason they're choosing the biography is because they look at the biography materials and seem to say that this makes sense to them, that this looks like something that they're kind of familiar with. It's like the workbook part of the portfolio. And that seems to make sense to teachers. And I'll talk more about our biography piece in a little bit. Plus, we've been able to adapt some biography materials. So we actually have some documents that teachers can work with. The passport is, and I think you've mentioned this too, David, is a tough place to start because the CEFR is really a broad snapshot of your language proficiency, and you really have to do some work to understand what that language proficiency level is before you can fill out that passport. The high school teachers that we've worked with are really interested in the passport. They're very interested in that. What we'll probably do is direct them to some biography materials and develop some biography materials to feed directly into making some judgments for the passport. Integrated with curriculum, we show teachers and we ask teachers to really reflect about, because we do a lot of work with curriculum in Edmonton Public Schools, so the curriculum shouldn't be new to anybody. But we ask them to really think about how this integrates with their curriculum and help teachers understand that implementing the European language portfolio and implementing the Common European Framework of Reference does not mean that you're not teaching your curriculum. So we're building some understanding around that and also looking at some specific outcomes from the various curricula that correlate very nicely with the Common European Framework of Reference. And even though not all the curricula was informed by the Common European Framework of Reference, probably because of the age of the curricula, there's still lots of common ground that can be found. In Edmonton Public Schools, work a lot with I can statements, and they work across curricular areas with I can statements, and it's used as a planning paradigm for planning instruction. It actually started with elementary science, and we have whole schools where the science teachers and the math teachers and the language arts teachers get together and they create can-do statements for unit planning purposes.
and then use them to frame instruction in the classroom. So for example, I was working with an FSL teacher who created I can statements, and this was before learning about, she's now going to implement Common European Framework of Reference and work with those can-dos with students, but this was before that ever came on the scene. And it was looking at her curricula, and of course she's working with fields of experience because that's what our FSL curriculum has, and looking at the authentic types of language tasks that students might be doing within those fields of experience, because they're not fields of vocabulary, they're supposed to be fields of experience. So looking at what would a student at that age authentically experience when they read, when they write, when they listen, when they speak around this domain or field of experience. And those are used as can do or I can, we call them I can statements. And then she uses those to frame all of the instruction for the unit. So they're up on the board when the students come in the class. There's a leading question. There's reflection during the class on whether or not they can do this thing. They look at collecting the evidence around it. So a lot of our students, or a lot of our teachers rather, are working with these classroom I can statements that are curricular in nature. They're tied to their curriculum. The nice thing about that is that when teachers show up to the information sessions and you're looking at the Common European Framework of Reference, they see the I can and say, oh, I know what this is. These are I can statements. You know, we write these in class, and it's a familiar construct. A little bit of a challenge is now we have to sort of mediate between the A1 and the A2, or the A1.1 checklist, A1.2 checklist, and of course the things the teachers are doing in their curriculum and would recognize as curricular can-dos. And so that's one of our next steps, is to begin to bring this together. And I have some examples to show you. I just don't know if it's on the next slide. It is on the next slide. So here's some examples of can-do statements. A lot of can-do, I can statements are written by teachers in the classroom, but there is a bank of can-do statements, and Larry, I know you're familiar with these. There are a bank of can-do statements that were created for our bilingual language arts classrooms, and the reason these were created was Edmonton Public Schools, and this is one of those things about building momentum and improving language programs, did a very broad survey of parents within the bilingual program. And one piece of feedback that came back out of that survey was that parents were unsure what their child was supposed to be able to do in Arabic at the end of grade 6. Or what should my child be able to, what level should they be speaking at in Ukrainian at the end of grade 2 or 3. So a team of consultants led by me created these can-do statements, and I just have a very, very brief example to show you, from grades 2 to 6. So here's an example from the speaking and or representing, because in our language arts curricula we have a speaking and we also have a representing strand. Grade 2, I can use words I have practiced to talk about myself and topics I know well. Grade 3, I can describe, this is a real disparate group of outcomes. The language arts curricula, the way it's written, it's not as straightforward as some of our second language curricula. And I don't know if you find this with maybe French immersion language arts curricula. It's maybe a little harder to interpret what is this outcome actually asking me to do, because you can actually break down an outcome into pieces. So this is a cluster of outcomes grouped together to create to be interpreted as I can use words I have practiced to talk about myself and topics I know well. And then that same cluster of outcomes representing the bump up in the curriculum would be I can describe something that has happened to me and how it makes me feel. Grade 4 would bump up to I can tell others what I think about something I have seen or experienced. Now you're getting the idea here. These are fairly broad in nature. What teachers do who work with these is break these down into further criteria for use in the class, as I suspect they do with many of the can-do statements that are in the CEFR, as I suspect they do with the can-do statements that are in many of those checklists. Grade 5, I can give my opinion about a topic I know well, and grade 6, I can support my opinion about a topic I know well. So roughly the same cluster of outcomes as it progresses over years. What this has in common, this work was curriculum. So this was linked to strictly curriculum, but it was work that was informed by the Common European Framework of Reference. Of course, we start with the words I can. It represents a logical progression we hope. It's trying to focus on something that the student might do in their real life, in the context of their real life. And of course, the key for us is that they focus on proficiency rather than deficiency. They focus on what you can do, and they're age appropriate. So this was work that was piloted in the schools. We received feedback from teachers through a pilot. They tried it out, told us what needed to be adjusted. We wrote a teacher's guide, and most recently, all of our bilingual schools received a CD with this whole package of documents in it. It's actually very challenging because there's slight variations in outcomes among all of them. So we had these 7 binders open on the table, and we'd read out one outcome in Arabic, Hebrew, Ukrainian, Spanish, and we went around the table and checked all of these outcomes, but it is now accurate. The pro of this is that the teachers are very happy. They're using this for long-range planning. Teachers are using this for their year planning in terms of their curricula. They also like it because it's something that makes sense to them. Parents are very happy. We have a document that has all of the can-do statements just listed on it. We have a student copy that has 3 columns for I can do this, with the I can statement with I can do this independently, without help, or on my own, with help, not yet. So it can be used for goal setting. And I think that the students seem to be happy because it seems to be quite clear. But again, teachers are taking one of these and we'll be breaking it down into multiple criteria. If you're working with a story, for example, your criteria would be specific to that. So these are the types of can-do statements that some of our teachers have been working with. What it's helped do is help get them ready to look at the Common European Framework of Reference and see it as something familiar. I guess what we've been doing for the last little while without realizing what we were doing was creating a culture of readiness for the Common European Framework of Reference and for the European language portfolio, so that when teachers who are familiar with documents like our can-do statements and those types of constructs and assessment for learning are listening to information about the European language portfolio and feeling quite comfortable with the concept, because they feel like it's tying into something they're doing already.